everyone, we are the Group 2 and in this video presentation, we will be introducing one of the 21st literature written by Mia Tiham entitled as The Ascension of Ladyboy. So under this video, you will see a short description about the author and the story behind the title of this literary piece, a brief synopsis of the story and the application of the literary theories that we used. So please watch on until the end.
Filipino identity in the Philippines. Speculative fiction anthropologists has made multiple cured or different sexualities usual. As the editors like Mia Tiham, as part of them, it encouraged genres more than what was expected in fiction to push them to push the limits to Filipino identity. It includes Philippine culture, trends, and the things that attract Filipinos to be introduced to international readers. One of her works, The Ascension of Our Ladyboy, originally published in the Philippine Speculative Fiction 3, reprinted in Expanded Horizons. And it was later given an honorable mention in the 28th year Best Fantasy and Horror. From the title itself, it shows a glimpse of the story in which Ladyboy is an oxymoron that means transvestite. The narrator of this story is Ladyboy shares his struggles on growing up transgender in a family unwilling to accept her gender identity. Ladyboy is outrageous, outspoken, and wonderfully blunt. Tiham uses humor as a tool to expose and dismantle prejudice against the transgender community in the Philippines. He uses mostly English and a few Filipino phrases and expressions and words. And he also uses Philippine supernatural beings and practices along with the story, like aswang, foreshadowing different angles of our Filipino culture.
Mabuhay! My name is Ladyboy and I'm from Los Angeles, Iriga City.
Ladyboy was the narrator of the story. He shared his struggle growing up in an unwilling family to love and accept him for who he was. He told everything he wanted to do as a lady, yet he cannot express them as he is petrified that his father might not accept him for who he was. He was merely raised by their generation named Iyahi. She is known as an aswang. Moving forward, he went through a life and death situation, being beaten up by the hands of his own father. And so he said to stop all the suffering he's going through, he decided to flee away from his home and family. And while in his own tight situation, nothing feed or shelter him, he decided to look for a job that would help him survive to the situation he's into. Then one time, while he's on his job, he saw someone who he thought would be his for the rest of his life. They spent a lot of time together, but alas, the boy wished for a family, and Ladyboy could not fulfill that as he cannot conceive a child. So Ladyboy cursed him. As the story goes, he decided to go back home. His father did not really care about him anymore. They talked from time to time, but nothing else happened from that. On the hand, his mother still in denial stage as she cannot accept Ladyboy for who he was. Later in his life, he got to live the life he wanted, though the life that he wished has nothing in return. He could care less about that. He had always dreamed of joining in a beauty contest, introducing himself in a crowd. So once again, in his new self, he wanted to be in Miss Universe and say,
Mabuhay! My name is Ladyboy and I'm from Los Angeles, Iriga City. And for my talent, I'll show you my aswang powers. Winner, di ba?
So let's go to the application of theories. So the first one is the author-dependent approach, which has two subtypes, and these are the author-biographical approach and the moral philosophical approach. So let's go first to the author-biographical approach. So every good story has a good author. So the fiction story entitled The Ascension of Our Lady Boy was published in Philippine Speculative Fiction 3, and it's received an honorable mention in 2008 year's Best Fantasy and Horror. The story is about the boy's life journey, claiming his identity as a lady. So actually, this is all about the author's life and times. So the author lives in an imperfect society where there are so many toxic people in the environment. So she made this an inspiration to make a wonderful story, and one of this is the Ascension of Our Lady Boy. So next, let's go to the second subtype of the author-dependent approach, which is the moral philosophical approach. So in analyzing the story's deeper meaning, relating to morality and giving importance to its moral value. So using philosophical approach will lead us to significant teachings that the author wants to convey. Based on the context of the story, earliest memory of the lady boy is when his father was complaining about how he walked. And his mother was shocked because he was wearing her dress and heels. So having this kind of parents is tough, knowing that every parent should support their children. So an additional factor is love is not based on the gender of a particular person. So in the story's context, Lady Boy found his prince charming, but it didn't end well. The boy wanted to have kids. And if Lady Boy was a true lady, he will not marry him. So for this part, the author is thinking about our society. So for this part, the author thinking about our society is about the transgender community. That's why he made the story The Ascension of Our Lady Boy. She wanted to teach us that transgenders are the same with other people. Like we should accept and love them and treat them in a way how we treat other people.
So next, the more philosophical approach is the text-dependent approach, and under that it has a subtype that is known as the structuralism. So why did we use structuralism? It's because the story mentioned a lot of American words that have a different meanings when it comes to Filipino slang. So the first one is heaven. Usually when you look it up through online, heaven means the sky. However, when you're looking up through the Filipino slang, heaven means something that you've always been wanting to do and eventually you fulfill it. Like for example, I've always been wanting to go out, however my mother won't allow me to do this, she said. But not until she got me here and she said I could go out and spend some time with my friends. And as I got through them, I said, heaven. Why? Because I got to do what I've been always wanting. So the next word is tikbalang. It's a mystical creature here in the Philippines that has a head of a horse and like a human body. But the hoof, or like the lower part, is also the horse parts. Like it has the tails, the butt horse, and the horn, hooves and stuff. And then lastly, the word aswang, which the author used to describe their generation named Iyay, because they said Iyay was an aswang to their barangay and everyone knows that. However, he did not really care. So next to text-dependent approach is a reader-dependent approach. Reader-dependent approach is like based on what we understand through the story's context. So in our group, we see the story as an unwillingly love from a family that a boy could never receive, or like a family that could not accept their son, their own blood. So just like his father, like the moment Ladyboy was born, he already dictated his future. Like he wanted to be a man, he wanted him to be a soldier, a man of the country, while his mother still in the denial stage of life. She cannot accept Ladyboy for who he was, and the only person that would accept him for who he was Iyai, the generation maid. Although Iyai was called as Aswang, known as a shape-shifting evil, she has always been the knight in shining armor of Ladyboy. She understands the situation that he's into, understand him for who he was, and accept him for who he was. Like everything a mother is supposed to do, she's the one who's been doing all of that, not Ladyboy's original mother. Like the only person who's supposed to understand you the most is your mother, right? However, Ladyboy's situation is very different. His own mother cannot accept him. So like if I were in his situation, I would be so like on the verge of that, like wanted to kill myself, because how come no one would accept me for who I am? How come no one would want me to bloom like a flower? Why is it that they want me to follow their decisions? Because like I have my life, I want to do whatever I wanted to do, and I want people to know who I really am, just like that. Like, you know, Ladyboy is very strong. He went through a life and death situations, you know, so it's quite a good of him to succeed in life and live a life that you've always been wanting to do. You know, when people usually said we might not be related by blood, but at least we love each other by heart. I think Iyai and Ladyboy felt that, because although Ladyboy never expressed his love towards Iyai in his story, like he describes Iyai in like a mean way, it doesn't really destroy the definition of love towards them. Like for me, their relationship is like the perfect definition of strong bond between unrelated people. They understand and know each other, even though they don't tell everything to one another. They know it by heart, by act, and the way a person would stand up. So that's all. Thank you.